Hi all, this is Daniel Klein. I'm a graduate of the Rabbinical School of Hebrew College and the Associate Dean for Admissions and Student Life. Thank you for joining me for this webinar. I'm honored that you are doing so. The purpose of it is to share with you about our approach to rabbinic education, about placement, and about the admissions process. So it is an overview of the Rabbinical School. I've created a PowerPoint to take us through this information. I'm going to share that with you on the screen now. So the agenda for our time together is I'm going to go over some basic information of the school, our approach to rabbinic education, as well as then how it flows down into practice, into reality, and an overview of the program. We'll talk a little bit about then Tefillah and spiritual growth, professional development and job placement, the admissions process, tuition, and financial aid. So the basics of our program. The Rabbinical School of Hebrew College is a 5 or 6 year program, depending on your Hebrew level and tech skills coming in. So you can think of it as a K through 5 program, beginning in Mikorot as the K year and going through Shana He. As I said, depending on your Hebrew level and tech skills will impact whether you start in Mikorot or Shana Aleph. Mikorot, by the way, means sources or foundation. It's a foundational year, though it is a part of the program. About half our students start in Mikorot, half start in Shana Aleph. The program is a full-time on-campus program. And the Shana Gimel year, so the 3rd of 5, the 4th of 6, is spent in Israel. And when you complete the program, you are ordained as a rabbi and receive a master's in Jewish studies. There's one exception to that we will talk about a little later in this webinar. So let me start now by sharing about our approach to rabbinic education, the big picture of what makes us who we are, what's animating what we're doing here. I would say the first element of our approach, the first pillar, is openness. We give our students and faculty the freedom and responsibility to find an honest, personally authentic expression of Jewish life and Jewish practice in their lives. We're not affiliated with a movement, and we have a pretty wide open approach to an understanding of what Judaism can be. And we do that. We help our students and faculty find their place within Jewish tradition in this honest, open way through, and this is the second piece, a deep, immersive experience of Torah learning and Jewish living. So the program is premised on these sort of two elements going together. The freedom to find your place combined with doing so in a deep, immersive experience of Jewish learning and living. A way of thinking of this, an analogy that really resonates for me, is one of relationship. What we're trying to help our students do is find a meaningful relationship with Jewish tradition where you are both a receiver of tradition as well as an innovator. So in that sense, you're both sort of listening to tradition as well as in conversation with, truly in dialogue with. And the other piece of what we're doing is community, that we're doing this together. If the first one in particular, the openness, sends you off on a path of sort of your own personal journey and quest, this third leg, community, really pulls us back into relationship with other people. We have a real commitment to doing this together, to the journey to ordination and beyond with each other. So in that sense, you are both responsible for your own growth as well as the people around you's growth. The Torah I often think about with this is thinking of us as having a real commitment to the idea of shaliach tzibor. The shaliach tzibor is the term for, traditional term for the person who's leading a prayer service. It literally means sent by the community, somebody who's sent by the community. Right, in that image, it's actually really beautiful because we often think of the sort of the shliach tzibor being up in front and sort of being responsible for shaping the experience, which is partially true, but the other part is that person is sent by the community. right? And that as community members, that makes a claim on us. We're responsible for that person. So that dynamic of being both sort of responsible for yourself as well as each other is essential to what we're doing here. And in that way, the one other thing I'd say about it is how we understand pluralism, which is one of the ways we often describe our program, right? Pluralism is a reaction to diversity. Diversity is just a fact. It's a description of what's in the room. Pluralism is a way of engaging with that diversity that's about engagement, that's about supportive, and I would say in our case, loving engagement, trying to understand the other and support the other. I want to emphasize that this general approach, this big picture, is a very practical approach to rabbinic education, we believe. And this comes from the idea that, or implicit in our approach, is this notion that before you can be a rabbi, you have to be a Jew. That the basis of your rabbinic leadership is that you have a deep and meaningful personal relationship to the tradition. So that when you're speaking with people about Shabbat, when you're leading people in Tefillah, all the other areas of Jewish life, that's coming from a place of real personal depth. And that's practical because if people are going to hear you, I think, there's a Jewish notion that things that go out from the heart enter the heart. So if you're going to be effective in this work, I think it has to be coming from a place of real sort of personal depth. In addition, if you're going to sustain yourself in this work, having these practices are going to be critical for you. And the first two pillars I mentioned of openness and deep immersive learning really support that. And the second thing is, I think the second pillar of being a rabbi is really serving and loving people. That's what the job is. Mixing your life, merging your life with Jewish tradition, and serving and loving people. And our emphasis on community, as well as other elements of our program, but particularly community, really help people develop the habits of heart and mind to serve people. So how does this flow into reality? The first thing I would say is that our learning model is a combination of graduate school and yeshiva. It's graduate school in that you have a number of classes, you have assignments, secondary source reading, you'll have finals, etc. But it's yeshiva, first of all, in that it's, it's pass-fail. There are no grades. We try to, as much as possible, eliminate unhealthy learning motivators, which grades generally tend to do. It's also yeshiva in the schedule. If you look at a typical day here, there's tefillah from 8 more or less to 9 in the morning. Then you're in the Beit Midrash from 9 to 11:15 preparing for class. Then you have class from 11:30 to 1, a break for lunch and mincha, and then class or Beit Midrash again from 2:30 to 4. So you can see it's a very intensive full day here on campus. And as I said, it's more of a yeshiva kind of schedule. And the reason we're committed to that in part is that this style allows for both the community experience as well as the deep immersion in Torah learning with Chavruta in the Beit Midrash that is so critical to what we're doing here. I should note, by the way, that since we're talking about the schedule, that community is not just something we talk about, but it's actually something that we really devote time to. In part, community is critical or is supported and is cultivated through the Beit Midrash, which is such a relational space. When I was describing time in the Beit Midrash before, from 9 to 11:15, that is not an optional time. That's a required time that you're expected to be there. There's a chavruta, a study partner there waiting for you, or there with you. There's faculty there supporting you. We go through a process of forming chavrutot for your classes so that we're trying to figure out the best individual matches, that to find the best chavruta for each of you, as well as maximizing the needs of the class as well. And Beit Midrash and chavruta is such a relational space where it's you, a chavruta, and a text as you're in dialogue all with each other, right? So part of the community is formed through that, and part of it is also we actually devote time specifically to community. On Wednesday mornings, we take time from Beit Midrash to be together as a community, sometimes in small groups, sometimes as a whole community, where the purpose of it is to really share with each other what's going on and support each other. And similarly, you have lunch every Wednesday with your class cohort, the people that you will have most of your classes with, as well as will ultimately be ordained with. That cohort of folks have lunch together every Wednesday. And again, a similar purpose to really support each other, share with each other what's going on, help each other in each other's growth. So let's turn now to the classroom learning. Obviously, that is where you will spend much or most of your time, either in class or in Beit Midrash preparing for class. The curriculum, the Judaics curriculum, is made up of a number of components. There's Tanakh, really the bulk of it being Chumash, the 5 books of Moses. Rabbinics, comprised of Talmud and Halakha. Jewish thought, theology, and prayer. And Hebrew. Hebrew, of course, in a program that emphasizes textual learning in the original, is obviously critical to supporting all that. And in the Judaics curriculum, the focus is really, the heart of it is Chumash and Talmud. Rabbinics in general, but really Talmud, where that's the core of your learning. Starting in Shana Aleph, each year of the program, you will study one book of the Chumash in depth, particularly Breshit and Shmot, Genesis and Exodus. You'll spend a year on each of those books. The other books you'll spend a semester on. And each year for Talmud, you'll have a theme. So in Shana Aleph, it's brachot, it's blessings. In Bet Gimel and Daled, it's a rotating theme of Moed, sacred time, Nashim Gvarim, gender issues, and Nizikin, civil damages and responsibility. That theme influences what you do in Talmud and then in Halakha. So in the Moed year, as you're studying excerpts from various tractates of the Talmud about sacred time, your Halakha classes are going to be Hilchot Shabbat, laws of Shabbat, and Hilchot Yom Tov, laws of Chagim, for example. And these classes really are the heart of the learning, where you spend most of your time. So Chumash classes and Rabbinics, particularly Talmud classes, tend to meet twice a week, which means you also have Beit Midrash twice a week in preparation for them. So that's a good amount of time spent on that. Jewish thought, theology, and prayer, we take you through a sequence of Jewish thought, beginning with what we call classical Jewish thought, sort of rabbinic thought, medieval, contemporary, modern. You'll have required classes on Kabbalah and Chassidut, and then also on the background and theology of prayer and the Jewish year. So a word about our approach to this learning. As I've already said, you spend a lot of time in the Beit Midrash. The goal of that is, of course, to learn the content, to learn what the text is saying, the text itself, as well as the tradition of interpretation. Various different teachers will focus on different eras and different aspects of interpretation, some focusing more on the classic medieval Meforshim, some focusing more on contemporary interpretations. Over the course of your time in Rabbinical School, you encounter a full range of these interpretations. But then also, part of the learning will be about you forming a relationship to the text. What is this text, in addition to what it actually says, what does it say to you about how to live a sacred life? Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi used to say something to the effect of, that's nice, but can you daven it? Right? Which is to say, like, it's interesting ideas, but how do we actually take it in and make it ours, make it real for us? What do we do with it? And in that way, this piece really gets at the heart of what we're trying to do with our Torah learning, which is to help all of our students become a part of the conversation that we call Torah, right? The conversation about how to live sacred, holy lives that our people have been having for millennia now, that we call Torah. That's the goal, for you to be able to be a part of that conversation and for that to be your conversation. We also are hoping in this approach that you'll develop the skills for lifelong learning. Rabbi Art Green, the founder of the school, often says that one of the things he's most proud of is that our graduates still love Torah when they leave here. Many of our graduates are still learning in Chavruta with their Chavrutot from when they were here in school. So our hope is that these 5 or 6 years in school will help bring you into this conversation with the skills to do so, as well as the habits of not just learning the text, but of asking what it means, so that you, throughout your life, can be part of this ongoing conversation. And what's probably implicit or obvious is that this program, since we're not affiliated with a particular movement, we are not prescriptive about how you understand the text or how you live your Jewish life. So when you're studying, for example, the halakha courses is the most sort of significant place that this might come up. We're not going to tell you what the halacha is. Our approach is more like, let's engage in a conversation about these topics and understand where they come from, and then give everyone the freedom to figure out how they're going to engage with it. So, for example, my favorite example is in the Nashim Ugvarim, the men's and women's, the gender issues year of rabbinics. You're going to have a one semester class called Hilchot Kedushin, Laws of Marriage, where you'll trace Jewish marriage from the Chumash up through its codification in what we think of now as an Orthodox Jewish wedding in the medieval period, and then ask all sorts of questions about Jewish marriage. For example, is kinyan and kiddushin, the traditional form that the form for two people coming together as an intimate partnership, is that still a relevant approach today in an egalitarian age? And we'll read Rachel Adler, who has a totally different approach to forming intimate unions, called Brit Ahuvim, a lover's covenant. And it'll be a wide open conversation about how you want to engage with it. We will talk about interfaith marriage and rabbis being involved in that. And there'll be all sorts of opinions about whether or not that's appropriate. And it's wide open. And there's no answer given here, but hopefully the goal is to give you the tools to be able to make decisions for yourselves. So though I made a big emphasis about how professional development or practical rabbinics is really this whole approach, rather the whole approach is a practical approach, there is, of course, also a column of the curriculum that is what people tend to think of as professional development or practical rabbinics. We want you to leave here with the skills to serve. So that, of course, is in what I was describing before as the habits of heart and mind, to really open your heart to people, care for them, and meet them where they're at. And it's also specific skills to support your capacity to lead people and support people and care for people. In general, in the arc of the program, the first couple of years are more internally focused, meaning there's less of the professional development, more focused on you developing the skills to be a learner and focusing on your inner life and growth. And after the Israel year, more of the professional development courses come in. There are some in the earlier years, but really it's weighted towards the latter as the program is more outward focused, as you're getting ready and closer to serving in the world as a rabbi. I want to note and emphasize, as this first bullet says, that we do not equate being a rabbi as being a pulpit rabbi. For our approach, we celebrate the fact that there are many doorways into Jewish life, and there's a real need for rabbis to stand at all of those doors and help welcome people through the doors and into Jewish living. So the pulpit is one of the places that our graduates serve, but there are many others, and we're trying to help prepare people and celebrate the different possibilities of how people can serve. During your time in professional development classes, you'll have classes in sort of many of the major areas of rabbinic work, in education, life cycle facilitation, being a darshan, darshanit, giving divrei Torah, pastor, pastoral care, management, and leadership. You'll also have 2 years of required internships, which are generally done in the 4th and 5th year. We help people find internships. There's a lot of local institutions, synagogues, hillels, day schools that turn to us and want to hire a rabbinical school intern every year. And you're also free to find your own internship as well. You also have the option, if you want, to do a specialization. The most intense specialization you can do is the Rav Chazan program, so that you would graduate as both a cantor and a rabbi. You have to apply to that program, and so in other words, in addition to being admitted to the rabbinical school, you have to be admitted to the cantorial school. There's additional classes that you take many of the semesters that you're here, so that your base is the rabbinical school, then you take cantorial classes in addition, and then there are 2 summers that you have to devote to learning here full time. I think they're 8 week. It's an 8 week, 2 intensive 8-week programs. You could also do a master's in Jewish education. This is the one specialization that displaces, excuse me, the master's in Jewish study. Excuse me. Meaning you would graduate and be ordained as a rabbi and get a master's in Jewish education instead of a master's in Jewish study. Or you could do one of our specializations. There's 4 of them: spirituality and social justice leadership, pastoral care, chassidut, and halakha. When you do one of those 4 specializations, you graduate and you're ordained as a rabbi, you get a master's in Jewish studies, and you get a certificate of having completed the specialization. It is possible to do 2, meaning you could, for example, do a master's in Jewish education and possibly do the chassidut specialization, for example, although it is hard to do 2. It takes a lot of additional work. And you don't have to specialize if you don't want to. So I just want to emphasize for a moment that tefillah and spiritual growth is a critical part of what we're doing here. That in addition to gaining knowledge of Jewish tradition and forming a relationship with the textual tradition, obviously this is a living tradition as well. And as a program that meets Monday through Friday, one of the main areas of opportunity for practice together is tefillah. We've made the choice to daven together as a community, which is not an easy choice as a community that is not part of a movement, doesn't have a set way of davening. But we've made that choice in part because we think it is so important for people to develop a real tefillah practice, a real prayer practice, both for their own leadership capacity as well as for their personal nourishment. So as you can see here, for the tefillah component of our spiritual growth program, what we're trying to help people do is develop a knowledge of the Siddur, but then also develop a personal spiritual practice rooted in Jewish tradition, which is to say that we don't want you just to know how to say a bunch of words from a book that could be prayer. We want you to develop a practice of prayer, which means taking the words of prayer and figuring out your relationship to them such that they become prayer. And if you do that, you have a much greater capacity to help draw other people into prayer. And then the other thing, the other element of our tefillah program is to help you develop leadership skills to lead other people in prayer. So in terms of the tefillah, part of the way we do that is by forming groups each semester based on our tefillah commitments and desired areas for experimentation and growth. So groups come together, they meet once a week, at least in practice. So let's say Tuesday morning, they'll meet to daven in the particular way that you've chosen. And then we have time in our schedule on Wednesday mornings after community time. So from 9:30 to 10:30 on Wednesdays to reflect on our tefillah practice. So for example, there's often many semesters, there is a contemplative minyan. There is a traditional egalitarian halachic minyan, like what you'd find in a conservative shul, but sometimes also doing interesting experimentations on that. Like how do we work with a full liturgy to try to bring it to life? And many other forms of experimentation. The idea is to practice in a particular way, at least for a semester, maybe for a year, and try to really grow in that practice. And then maybe switch to another one and see what other ways you can approach prayer that might help bring it to life for you. We also, in addition to davening in that way in small groups, we daven together as a whole community every Wednesday. And that's led in different ways, and that's a way of sharing with the whole community the different experiments that are going on. And I should note with this that, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a real commitment to Shaliach Tzibor, this concept of the person who has been sent by the community to lead us in prayer. So there's an expectation to be at tefillah, even if it's not your particular preferred mode of davening. But there's, of course, also the space to step to the side if you need to do other things to fulfill your own needs and commitments. So we're trying to do that dance of supporting each other, even if it's not our preferred practice, while also giving each other space to do what we need to do. In addition to tefillah as a site for spiritual growth, and of course the Beit Midrash, which I should put on this list as a real place of spirituality, right, of the text being a site for connection with God. We also have a program called Spiritual Direction. It's an optional program, and the way it works is you're paired with a spiritual director. You meet once a month. This is totally free of charge to students, and it's a place for talking about your inner life and your relationship to God. There's a very similar program called Writing as a Spiritual Practice, where you meet once a month with this really extraordinary writer and mentor and teacher named Merle Feld, and she'll give you prompts for writing, and then you'll share with her and reflect on what you've written. Again, all geared towards your inner life and supporting you. And of course, every student has a faculty advisor, where a big part of the faculty advising component, a big component of faculty advising is, where are you in this process of Jewish and rabbinic formation, and how do we support your growth towards that? So as I mentioned, the Shana Gimel year is spent in Jerusalem. By and large, a few students have spent it in Tel Aviv, but you're in Israel for sure, for the most part in Jerusalem. The learning is based at the conservative yeshiva with the option to learn elsewhere if you want. And the purpose of it is to try to, or the structure of it is to provide continuity with the Hebrew college experience and community, while also giving you the freedom to experience and learn in Jerusalem and Israel, and take advantage of the unique opportunity of that. We feel that it is a critical part of rabbinic growth to spend a year in Israel, learning from and learning about this major center of Jewish life, regardless of your political orientation. I should say, by the way, that Hebrew College does not, we're not an advocacy organization, we're an educational institution. We really believe in open conversation. We are a Zionist institution, which is to say that we do believe in there being a Jewish state in Israel, and the flowering of that Jewish state, but also, as the Declaration of Independence in Israel says, we believe that all peoples in the land of Israel should be part of this democracy and should be treated with dignity and respect. So, as an institution, we're not neutral about Israel, but we're very wide open. And as I said, we're not an advocacy organization. At our best, we're a place where people of all different perspectives are in conversation. So our belief is that regardless of your particular political orientation, it's critical to spend time in Israel to experience this center of Jewish life. And all of our students who have gone have shared that sense that this was a valuable experience. We do, by the way, recognize that picking up and moving to Israel for an entire academic year is very challenging for many people, and we give exemptions based on financial, health, and family needs. So we give an automatic exemption is available to you to go for one semester if you're in a partnered relationship and your partner can't go with you, for example. So we understand that this is challenging. On the other hand, we're going to push you if it is challenging for you to get there. We're going to push to try to figure out a way for you to get there, because we do think it is so important. So let's talk for a moment about placement. After you finish this program, will you get a job? And I'm happy to say that the answer, by and large, in almost every case, is yes. We have just about 120 graduates and a 95% job placement rate. People who haven't been able to find jobs tend to be fairly limited in their geography. It's not impossible to get a job if you're limited in geography, but if you have to be in Boise for whatever reason, for partner needs, et cetera, it can be tricky. But by and large, you can see almost all of our graduates are working as rabbis out in the world. You can see the breakdown in the work. About 50% are in pulpit work, and the rest are doing things like Hillel, Jewish communal leadership, Jewish education, and pastoral care. I should note, by the way, that given that we opened our doors as a rabbinical school in 2003, though Hebrew College has been around since 1921. The Rabbinical School is a newer program of Hebrew College, and graduated our first graduates in 2008. It's pretty extraordinary, the reception we have had in the Jewish world, that our graduates have been recognized as rabbis, and what we're doing here has been recognized as credible rabbinic education. So we're very grateful for that. I think it has to do with both the quality of the program, the reputation of our faculty, and the extraordinary students that continue to come here. Just a note for the placement about Pulpits. Of the 47% who are in Pulpits, the breakdown is 28% in Reform, Conservative, and then Independent congregations, a handful in Reconstructionist and Renewal congregations. So you can get jobs at affiliated congregations as a graduate of our program. I'm happy to report. And our graduates are serving all over the country. And increasingly, as we have more and more graduates and the word spreads about Hebrew College, this map is going to continue to fill up. But it's not, in other words, the point of this is that we're not restricted to or limited to the New England area where Hebrew College is more well known. More and more our graduates are going out all over the country and serving. So, you're thinking of applying to rabbinical school. Let's talk about the application process. The first thing to talk about is what we're looking for. So what I would say is, on the personal level, we're looking for people who are aligned with our approach of rabbinic education, who are interested in being in an open environment where we're not going to tell you what your Jewish life needs to look like, but you are excited about finding an honest and personally authentic expression of Jewish life. We're looking for people who love Torah learning and love being in the Beit Midrash. This is a place for people who really want to be a part of this conversation we call Torah, and to do that in a Beit Midrash context with Chavruta learning, with a real dedication to text learning in the original. And we're looking for people who can be in an open environment and be supportive community members. Not to say that you won't grow in that capacity, but that is a basic element of who you are, is a deep commitment to community and engaging with diversity. And we're looking for people, and this is sort of redundant, I would say, who are excited about the project of living deeply into Jewish life and practice, right? Which is to say that people who are looking to grow as Jews as a basis for being spiritual leaders. On the academic side, it's a rigorous academic program, and we're looking for people who have the capacity to thrive in that setting. We're looking for people who have strong communication skills, both in writing and in their interpersonal capacities. I should note that you do need to have a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university to attend. And I'm happy to report that you do not need to take the GREs to apply here. We have not found that to be a necessary part of assessing your academic capacity. To be ready to start here, as I said, placement is largely determined on your Hebrew and text skills. So obviously there are requirements for your levels of that. To be ready to start in Mikorot, we say you need to have the equivalent of 2 years of modern Hebrew, taken, let's say, in a university setting. It's not determined, placement in this way is not determined based on showing us a transcript. We actually have a placement test that will assess your level of Hebrew. And so for Mikorot, it's 2 years of the equivalent of 2 years of modern Hebrew. I would emphasize that the most important thing is grammar as opposed to spoken Hebrew. Our sense is that working with Hebrew as a living language at an early part of your development is really important for getting the language inside you. However, we're really focused on sort of the grammatical skills, because that's what you'll be spending most of your time you'll need those for what you'll be spending most of your time on here, which is translating texts. So for that purpose, really knowing the 5 major binyanim and how to conjugate basic verbs in that is really an important prerequisite to starting in Mikorot. You don't need to have much experience studying text in the original to be ready for Mikorot. Of course, that is valuable. The more you've done, the better off you'll be. It's also, by the way, parenthetically, I would say a good reality check for whether or not our approach is a good fit for you, is to have spent time studying text in the original for an extended time. But you don't need to have extensive knowledge or experience of text skills to be ready to start in Mikorot. For Shana Aleph, we say 3 years of modern Hebrew. and the equivalent of a year's worth of Beit Midrash experience and the tech skills that come from it. We generally say that you need to be able to read accurately and comprehend basic unvocalized Mishnaic texts. So focusing your learning on Mishnah tends to be a very good way to get ready for here. I have guidelines for Hebrew and tech skill preparation that I'll send out along with this, this webinar, the recording of it. But so in addition to the technical preparation of Hebrew and tech skills, it's really important that you also be working on your own inner life before coming to rabbinical school. The analogy I often use is that if rabbinical school is like diving into the deep end of Jewish learning and Jewish living, you should already be in the shallow end, which is to say that you should already be engaged in a process of not just living into Judaism, but being a reflective practitioner, of thinking about what does it mean for you to grow in your relationship to God, relationship to Shabbat, Tefillah, Kashrut, Chagim, etc., all the elements of Jewish living. And wherever you are now, what does it mean to deepen, to grow in that? That should be part of how you're thinking about your Jewish life and how you're spending your time, really leaning into that and living into that. So you've decided to apply. Here is a basic application timeline. Applications are due in the middle of January, though I should say, importantly, that if you need additional time, we are totally open to that. It's not a problem. Just be in touch with me. We schedule interviews between February and the beginning of April in general. Financial aid applications and the FAFSA form are due March 1st. You'll get an admissions decision within a week of your interview, but you won't get a financial aid award until the beginning to middle of April. And we ask for your matriculation decision by May 1st. So that's the brief overview. So what I'm going to share with you now is also all available online on the website. I'll show you where in a moment. But these are the elements of the application. And online, you'll see that there's much more detailed information about these. So the first thing on the list is online application forms. There's a, this is the sort of fill in your name and background and all that sort of stuff. All that's done online. When you complete that, you then get access to a student portal where you can upload these other elements. So you'll have to upload the 2 essays you write, which we'll talk more about in a moment, 3 to 4 letters of recommendation. You'll send us a transcript, and we'll email you as well as indicate on the student portal when we've received that, and that we've received it, or all of your transcripts. You need to upload a resume, and this is where you also submit your Hebrew assessment. And for candidates for Shana Aleph, you also do a text assessment. I forgot to mention that we have, in addition to the Hebrew assessment for candidates for Shana Aleph, also do a text assessment. I should say that the Hebrew and text assessments are not available online, that I have to send them to you. If you don't have either or both of them, please be in touch with me and I'm happy to send them to you. And there is also a non-refundable application fee of $60. So one of the most important parts of the application is your essays. We ask for 2 essays for rabbinical applicants and 3 for Rav Chazan applicants. The first one is essentially, why do you want to be a rabbi? And the second one is to write a Dvar Torah, essentially. There are sub-questions, as you can see. Excuse me. There are sub-questions to the why do you want to be a rabbi question, but that's essentially what it's about. And the Dvar Torah, you can either write about a passage of Torah, or you can do a book review. I should say about the Torah one, we are using the term Torah here broadly, meaning it could be from the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, or Talmud, Midrash, Chassidut, Art Green, Heschel. Torah broadly understood as that ongoing conversation, Jewish conversation of living with meaning and with God. And the purpose of this second essay is to show us how you draw meaning from text and communicate about it, which is obviously a critical part of rabbinic work. For those who are applying to the Rav Chazan program, there's also a 3rd essay on the Cantorate. The specific question is online. So for references, I just want to say a word about references. We say 3 or 4 references. It does not, nothing is implied if you only have 3. It is totally fine to do 3 or 4. At least one should be from a rabbi. And you do not need to have an academic reference, although if you have a teacher in your life that knows you well, that is great, that's helpful. It could be from college, it could be more contemporary to you if college was a while ago. I should say, by the way, the recommendations, the way I encourage you to think about them is to think about people in your life who can help us get to know you, and ideally from different angles of your life. So maybe you want to get if you can, a rabbinic reference, an academic reference, a professional reference. There's sort of areas of your life to think about that is helpful to for us to get to know you. There is an online form on the website that I'll show you in a moment, that what you're going to do is send the link of this online form to the people writing for you, and they'll just submit it, their reference through that form online. There is a PDF version if they prefer to send in a hard copy as well, and I'll show you that on the website in 1 second. The transcripts, I should note that they are required but not determinative, meaning we are appreciative of the fact that for some people, for example, college may not have been the pinnacle of your academic capacity. It may not fully express that. So don't sweat it if your transcript is not as strong as you might like it to be. We take the whole candidate. We look at you holistically. So we're looking at the various aspects of who you are to help get a sense of, like, do we think you can handle this program? And academics is, of course, an important one, but not the only one. So let me just take a second to share with you the website so we can look at that together and see where these things are on the website. So this is the Hebrew College main page. If you go up to the graduate programs and hover over that, don't click on it, and then you go over to become a rabbi, click on the admissions and financial aid link. And if you scroll down, you can either click here on application instructions or on the tab here. And here's where you'll see in more detail all the information I just went over, the timeline, and then the list of application elements of the application process. So if you click on this online application form, it will take you to the online application. Please open up. There we go. The essays, Hebrew placement exam, etc. You can see here when you get to number 8, the 3 or 4 letters of reference. Please send this online form to the people writing on your behalf. If you click on that, that should open up in a separate tab. My apologies, I will fix that. But you can see this is the form. The other thing I want to point out, this is the printable downloaded form. If you need to send people a hard copy, so it's right there. That again shows up in more detail here with more information about it. Here's the application essays. So just to show you all this information online and how you can find it there. Come back to the PowerPoint. So as I mentioned, all candidates take the Hebrew placement exam, and candidates for Shana Aleph take a text assessment as well. I should note that we think of this as part of our conversation with you, that many people, if classes were to start the day after they were admitted, would not be ready either for Mikorot or Shana Aleph. The test helps us get to know where you are and help you get ready for our program. And as I mentioned, you need to get the assessment from me. So once applications are submitted, or once we have most of the application, we start inviting people for interviews. We invite everyone for an interview who we think is a strong candidate to our program. The interviews are scheduled between February and April. You should plan on spending 1 or 2 days here at Hebrew College. Your interview itself will be about an hour and a half's worth of time, but you may want to use this as an opportunity to spend more time here at Hebrew College, visiting classes, getting to know folks. The interview committee, so you'll meet in an interview with 5 or 6 members of the faculty and alumni community. And I often say we want to get you in the good sense. We want to get to know you. We think of ourselves as a combination of curious, fun, and serious. We're curious in that we want to get to know you better. We're fun in the sense that like we enjoy what we do, but we're also serious in the sense that we take you seriously and we take what we're doing here seriously. For the most part, the interview is open conversation where we're asking you questions based on your application and what you're saying in the sort of the flow of conversation. We do ask for you to prepare an opening statement. It's really an opening teaching, it should say, where we ask you to choose a small bit of text, 1 to 3 verses, either of Tanakh or a passage from the Talmud or something more contemporary, 3 lines from Heschel, whatever it might be, and share with us about what it means and why it's significant to you. 3 to 5 minutes. It usually is a lovely way to begin the conversation. We ask for it to be not something that you've written about already. So it helps us, just another bit of data to help us get to know you. And then we sort of go into open conversation. I would say in terms of preparing for the interview, in addition to preparing this opening teaching, to think about questions you've already written about, but just to be ready to talk about things like, obviously, why do you want to be a rabbi? To think about less what you do, although we're curious about what you do Jewishly, and more why you do what you do. To be share with us about you as a reflective practitioner. We want to get a sense of where you're headed with this, less about what exactly you want to do, but more sort of what's really pulling you to do this work and what you hope to accomplish as a rabbi. Those are the sorts of things I encourage you to think about. And as I said, it's a good opportunity to visit the school and visit classes. So we know that financing rabbinic education can be hard. The tuition this year is $30,960. That's a lot of money. You can see the other fees involved. There's an application fee. There's also a matriculation deposit that actually goes towards your tuition. And you have a $100 semester $100 registration fee each semester. For those of you who are doing the Rav Chazan program, there's also $400 voice lessons fee each year. And for 2 summers during your time here, there's a $9,000 charge for doing the 8-week summer intensive. We know this is a lot of money. Our goal, as much as possible, is we don't want money to be the reason that you don't come here. And here's what we're going to try to do. Here's what we do to try to make that happen. So there's 2 forms of financial aid available from us. The first one we call merit fellowships. We give out about 6 to 8 a year. In general, it's most of them are a $20,000 a year reduction in tuition for 3 years. So that's a typical merit fellowship we give out. The logic of 3 years is that gets you to a point where you're doing internships, which enable you to earn more money. We do, and by the way, internships for us right now, if you're doing a 10-hour-a-week internship, you make $10,000. A 20-hour-a-week internship, it's $20,000, and anything in between, you get the idea. We do give out 1 to 2 full tuition scholarships each year. We award these based on, it says, academic achievement, leadership potential, and demonstrated commitment to the core values of the Rabbinical School. I would also say that we're looking for people who we think can make a particularly significant contribution to the Rabbinical School and to the Jewish community. We only accept people into our program who we believe in and who we think can be excellent community members and rabbis. And within that pool, we do have to make some choices, merit fellowships, and that's sort of what we're looking for. Do we think you can make a particular contribution? There's no additional application required for the merit fellowship. All you have to do is submit the regular need-based financial aid application, which I'll talk about in a moment. And I should say, for simplicity's sake, the way we do things is if you receive a merit fellowship, you don't also receive need-based aid, meaning when you get your award from us of a merit fellowship, that's your financial award. So if you don't receive a merit fellowship, or in the years after your merit fellowship runs out, so in years, let's say 4 and 5 of your time in rabbinical school, you can apply for need-based financial aid. For the last few years, 100% of students who've applied for need-based aid have received support, most at our highest level of a 32% reduction in tuition. We determine need based on the FAFSA, the federal form that you fill out online, and the Hebrew College financial aid application, which is available on the website, which I'll also send out along with this, this webinar. I should note that the Hebrew College financial aid application takes into account that your financial reality prior to coming to rabbinical school may be very different than what it is when you come to rabbinical school, meaning most of our applicants, when they apply, are working. And as soon as they're working full-time, and as soon as they come to rabbinical school, they're not working full-time. The financial aid system in colleges generally is based on the financial situation of parents, which is, you know, generally consistent in the, you know, both the application phase and when their children are in college. Obviously, graduate school and rabbinical school is very different. So we take that into account in our giving. As I said, the Hebrew College form is available online. And if you have any questions, you can be in touch with me or our Director of Office of Student Services, Bob Gilo, whose email is right there, bgielow@hebrewcollege.edu. He is a very sweet and knowledgeable man and happy to help you in any way he can. I should note that there are other sources of financial support. In general, you know, most of our students are working part-time throughout their time in rabbinical school. And when it says placement support, what I mean by that is our faculty members who their role is working with students on professional development and job placement, help you find work part-time and find internships during your time in school, and help you find work upon graduation and throughout, you know, after continuing on after graduation. Many of our students are also taking out federal student loans. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of financial support from fellowships and scholarships outside of the rabbinical schools themselves. There is the Wexner Fellowship, which is a very competitive graduate fellowship program for people going into Jewish leadership that I recommend checking out and applying to. You can apply to the Wexner either in the year prior to coming to rabbinical school or in your first year of rabbinical school. It's also worth checking out your home community, the federation, the synagogue you grew up in. If you grew up in a synagogue, they might have resources available for you as well. But unfortunately, the primary fellowships and scholarships available are from the schools themselves. So that completes my overview of the Rabbinical School. I encourage you to be in touch with any questions you have. You can see my email and phone number there. It is both my job and my pleasure to be in touch with you to help you figure out if this is the right path for you and if Hebrew College is the right place for you. And whatever I can do to be of help in that process is my pleasure and my privilege. I am, of course, and I hope it came through, that I'm passionate about Hebrew College, but I also believe it is so important for you, for us, for the Jewish people, that you find where you need to be. And anything I can do to be of help in that process, I'd be happy to do. So don't hesitate to be in touch. Again, thank you for watching this webinar, and I look forward to being in touch with you. All the best.